As a link to what we know and what we need to know about planning for assessing learning spaces, the LSC presents stories from the LSC community about lessons learned from diverse experiences in planning learning spaces, and about emerging assessment strategies to determine the impact and influence of new and repurposed spaces on the experience of learning, as well as on the institutional culture.
I'm Gail Burd. I'm the Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs and Distinguished Professor in Molecular and Cellular Biology at the University of Arizona. I'm going to talk to you today about collaborative learning spaces that have helped our institution shift the culture towards improved teaching and learning. The stimulus for our change developed as a result of a grant that we had from the Association of American Universities. And the goal there was to improve STEM teaching. And we had a very innovative group of faculty, we call them the Coalition of the Willing, who developed faculty learning communities and provided support for evidence-based teaching. But what I'm going to focus on today is on how we piloted, surveyed, and developed collaborative classrooms. The pilot that we did is shown here in this example of this slide. It's in the Science and Engineering Library, which we took over for 6 weeks in the fall of 2014. Jeannie Narum visited us and helped us think about space and space for teaching and learning. And what we did in this space is we worked with the library and facilities management, the University Technology Center, the faculty, and the students, in fact, surveyed the faculty during this pilot, surveyed the students before and after the pilot, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit later. Our approach has really been to look for flat spaces, flat classrooms that we could convert into collaborative learning spaces. Often those spaces are old and have furniture that has, goes back to the last century. So we try to evaluate what is needed. The next slide shows us our template. You can see at the top, this is Biosciences West, room 301. We took this space over in the summer of 2015. Our pilot told us that we really want to have these collaborative learning spaces. The students liked it, the faculty liked it, and we learned many things. As a result of that pilot, we learned that we want spaces that's shown down here at the bottom that have movable tables, movable chairs, that also facilitate seeing anywhere in the classroom from any direction. So we put projectors and not monitors, projectors with screens around the room, and we allow the students to work together in groups of 4 because we found that to be much better than our pilot with groups of 6, which sometimes became groups of 8. And this allows the students to work across the table. And the next slide will allow you to see how that looks in action. This is Anthony Muscat. He is the chair of chemical and environmental engineering. And you can see in the background that there's a student with a yellow jacket and a red jacket. Those are our learning assistants. So one of the things that we have to do in these spaces is we have to have very good tasks for the students to work on as a group. Then have them come back together, share as the whole class, and then we have them work again on the same problem. We use undergraduates who have been in our classes and have earned reasonably good grades. They don't have to have an A. In fact, those who have struggled to get a B sometimes are better learning assistants. And we have these learning assistants help us while we're giving the class a task to work on. They don't give the answer. We train these students to understand how to help facilitate the discussion at the tables. And we have increased the faculty who have an interest in these collaborative learning spaces. The next slide shows what we've done on our campus. We started with the big yellow square in the middle, which is the Science and Engineering Library, where we did our pilot. And that's still an active collaborative learning space. And I'll talk a little more about that a little bit later. But our plan was to develop collaborative learning spaces across campus, adding 5 throughout each year. And that's accelerated a little bit because of interest on the part of our provost and our president in accelerating the student learning experience. I'll show you some assessment about that in a few minutes. But our approach is movable furniture, not fixed, so we can adapt the space to whatever we need, but also to use different size collaborative classrooms and to use them around campus to increase the size of our Coalition of the Willing, the number of faculty who want to participate in teaching in this way, using evidence-based practices. And as you can see, we'll have 5 new spaces beginning this next year. The next slide shows some of our constraints. Well, constraints are obvious on any campus. Some institutions have taken the approach of developing one big room or 4 big rooms or more in one localized building. Our approach is to spread them out. So that means we have to look for space, as you can see in the little green circle at the bottom. It also means we have to find funding. And I just mentioned that we have strong administrative support. Another constraint we have is faculty who want to teach in these spaces. Another very important aspect to our approach has been to develop faculty learning communities where the faculty come together with other faculty who are leaders in the use of evidence-based teaching practices. And usually the faculty learning communities range from 8 to 9 faculty per group. Since 2014, we've had 300 faculty, actually over 300 faculty, participate in faculty learning communities. So from a small group of about 6 faculty, we have really expanded the coalition of faculty who want to participate in this evidence-based teaching. The faculty can't really address how to change their classroom and how to change their teaching in that classroom without understanding the change from lecture to active learning. That's one of the things we talk about in the faculty learning communities. And we have had faculty learning communities specifically focused on these spaces. The faculty need time to change their classroom activities so that they develop learning tasks that the students will work on as a group. And that requires professional development. Some of that development has come from our Office of Instruction and Assessment, has 33 professionals. And a lot of that other support has come from other faculty. Collectively, all these things have worked to change the culture on our campus. And I'll give you some insight into what the faculty and the students say in a moment. So how do we leverage these spaces to promote change? The most important and the most critical component of what we've done is we hired Jane Hunter, who is our Director of Academic Resources and Special Projects. And she is a project manager by training. She teaches courses and programs on project management. And she also taught in the College of Engineering for several years. She is has significant teaching experience. We could not have done things without somebody with Jane's skill set. In fact, I think we couldn't have done it without Jane. Another thing, we strategically invite the instructors to participate in these rooms. For example, we had one faculty member who was not using the room effectively, and we asked her if she would rather go back to a regular lecture hall where she was before, and we knew that there was another professor teaching at the same time. So he, over the summer, completely modified his classroom and moved into the science and engineering lab, the lecture hall, which is really just a collaborative learning space, not a lecture hall at all. So we set expectations, and I'll show you a little bit about that in a few moments. We advocate evidence-based teaching throughout the campus with professional development for instructors, and as I mentioned, the undergraduate learning assistants. We have a summer program where we provide the professional development for faculty who want to teach in a collaborative learning space. And Jane has also developed a special program for learning assistants the week before classes start. As I mentioned, these are undergraduates who participate in teaching in these spaces. You might say it takes a village, really, because really the students are working together in groups and they need some assistance. We encourage and support the research analysis of how the students are learning in these spaces through publications or just getting the word out, giving presentations around the country. Another really important point is that it's been a bottom-up faculty program with significant top-down administrative support. So the faculty tell us what they want, and the administrators say, yes, go for it, and we'll help you. I encourage you to look at our website, Academic Affairs Arizona EDU, and under Collaborative Learning Spaces, there's a significant amount of information on what we've done. This is probably, you can't really see this so well, but this is something that Jane developed. It's a profile of successful collaborative learning space instructors. And whenever we find that there's been an instructor who's been put into a collaborative learning space, not one that we've selected per se, we send them this information and indicate that this is our expectation, that faculty will use the proper teaching styles and approaches so that students will learn. I have heard of a student who wound up in a collaborative classroom where the faculty member stood at the front, whatever that means, at the front of the classroom, and talked to the back of her head because these classes have chairs that go in multiple directions. So we make sure that the faculty are appropriately trained to teach in these spaces. We also show here at the bottom of that the difference between, at the top, these two circular diagrams, what a faculty member is doing when he's lecturing and how much he lectures, and what the students are doing, just listening. And we compare that using the COPUS observation protocol. So you can see that there's a lot more activity going on when someone uses active learning protocols. We have assessed what's going on. We assessed quite a bit. We assessed in the pilot before and after. And here we have assessed students a little bit into our program. This is in spring 2016. And we asked the students, does this space, does learning in this space enhance your learning? Does participation by talking to other students enhance your learning? We've also asked whether the classroom enhances the opportunities for activities. And can they get more help in a class that's set up as a collaborative learning space? As you can see, it's 80 to almost 90% of the students agree or strongly agree. Somewhat fewer, but definitely over 50%, at 62% of the students prefer a collaborative learning space over other rooms. Part of the challenge might be that we haven't trained all the faculty who wind up in a collaborative classroom, but I think more to the fact that we have trained our students to veg out in our lecture halls and be talked at, and they haven't had to participate and do significant work before they come to class, and now they must. So we're working to raise that number. The next slide will show what the faculty think. Here you see a survey that we did last fall. We asked the faculty what kinds of spaces they prefer. And as you can see, circled on the right-hand side, they prefer the collaborative learning spaces. Now, we only will have 30 this fall. And at this point in 2017, we only had 25. And so not everybody has had an opportunity to get in there, but we know that the faculty are very interested in moving into a collaborative learning space once they've identified that active learning is the way to go for their students. I have the computer science department who wants to have 100% of their classes in a collaborative learning space. We just don't have enough. As you can see in the bottom part of that graph, you can see that the number of collaborative spaces that we have are significantly below the traditional classrooms. So we'd like to increase the number there. We have about 440 different classrooms of different sizes on our campus. These are some comments that we heard from students. So from one student, my experience as a UA student and a first semester chemistry student has been greatly enhanced by this new classroom setup. I am more collaborative and it helps me work with others and communicate my thinking. I wish more classes were set up like this. And then from a faculty member, I'm trying new ideas here that I have never tried before in my 10 years of teaching. So it has been fun for me. The classroom is a partner in the learning process. What we have learned from these comments from faculty in the faculty learning communities, we're doing an assessment on them right now, is that faculty have not been given an opportunity to come together to understand the quality of their teaching and to improve their teaching. And they find that valuable. And one of the things that we have found is that we can support that teaching by having these spaces and giving professional development. Well, we had a bit of a crisis this year. It's a good crisis in one sense, and that is that the Science and Engineering Library will be impacted by some construction in the library, actually across two libraries, the Science and Engineering Library and the main library. We're going to be developing a student success district, and there's going to be significant noise in our largest collaborative classroom, 264 seats. That classroom makes use of that space for many of our freshman classes, and you can see the number of enrollments is very high. So we had a solution, and the solution is, as you can see in this picture, is to transform Gidding North Gym. This is a gym that is underutilized. In fact, there's only one class that meets part-time in there, and we decided to transfer this classroom into a collaborative learning space with support, and this will be the most expensive setup. But you can see we have a huddle in area for talking to the faculty and the students as they're coming into the class. And then we have a huddle out area for students to meet with the faculty and discuss what they've just learned or answer any particular questions. The last slide, I just want to acknowledge, as I've already mentioned, that it's critical to have one person, a Jane Hunter, who can help assist moving these projects forward, and to have very engaged faculty, John Pollard, Paul Blowers, and Lisa Elfring, who's now our Assistant Vice Provost for Instruction and Assessment, are all critical components.
We invite you to visit the LSC website for further stories from the field about the process of planning, of focusing on users in the context of focusing on the future for learning and learning spaces. Our website provides links to national reports that are major resources for planners at all stages of attending to Spaces That Matter, a portfolio of spaces that work, and collections of essays about audacious questions for planning that go beyond current practice. Information about upcoming activities related to learning spaces within the broader LSC community is also posted. The LSC is for and by the LSC community. Join us.